one of the biggest strengths that I find millennials and Gen Z bring to the table is this idea of like, we are not okay with the this is how it's always been done mentality. And I think that is not only pretty badass, but I think it's also necessary. Because so many of the systems that we have in this world, whether it's healthcare, the housing market, corporate structure, higher education, like we're dealing with global warming and geopolitical unrest and all of this stuff. Like so many of these systems that we have are broken.
Welcome to All Can, No Can't, the podcast where we toss out excuses, face our fears, and reclaim control. I'm Jeff Luther, your guide to mastering the chaos and turning obstacles into opportunities. Whether you're an entrepreneur navigating the ups and the downs of building a successful business or someone ready to rewrite the rules of your life, this is your space to grow, to push boundaries, and to embrace doing the hard shit that leads to greatness. Together, we'll explore stories of resilience, strategies for overcoming, and the mindset shifts that let you build a life on your terms. I use my experience with a life-altering diagnosis to help you find the can in every can't. So buckle up, because it's time to stop living in can't and start thriving in all can. You choose. Welcome back to All Can, No Can't. I'm your host, Jeff Luther. This is where we turn obstacles into opportunities and we trade excuses for execution. I'm the voice behind All Can, No Can't coaching. That's where I help entrepreneurs rewrite their story, take the next brave step. And remember, it's 30 seconds at a time. And most of you know, I've got three amazing young men that I'm raising, ages 20, 18, and 16. So I am beyond thrilled to talk to my next guest. Like we've missed each other a few times, which was disappointing. All times has been my fault, so I'll take that. But today I get to sit down with Hillary Spiritos. She's a pathfinding coach for young adults. She's the founder of Bat Out of Hell, which I love. I can't wait to ask you about that. But Hillary helps emerging adults build self-trust, cut through the noise of social media. Like, how in the world do you do that? And external pressure and step into a life aligned with their own values, which is a word that we hold near and dear around my house. She's coached students from NYU to Northeastern. She's backpacked the globe solo, which is way cool. Now she guides young adults to find direction without losing themselves in the process. And this episode is for anyone, really. It's not necessarily about young adults, but it's for anyone that feels stuck kind of between who they are, who they're told they should be, which is what we do to our kids, and who they know they could become. Hillary is like your guiding light for that. So Hillary, let's get right into it. Thank you so much for agreeing again to be on the show.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. It's totally not your fault. Totally get it.
You've been patient. Like when I told you I had this sick kid, you're like, oh my gosh, I hope he feels better. Anything I can do. So that was cool. Course. So you've led an interesting life, like backpack around the globe. How fun. Was it amazing?
It was. I am someone who really values travel, and I value experience. And so when my sister and my family, like I was graduating college, and they asked me, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do, like, for your summer vacation, really, until your life starts anew?
Right.
And there is this musician that I really love, and he was doing a world tour. And so I bought a ticket to see him in Copenhagen, and then built my trip there. So I did like a month learning Italian in Italy because he is Italian. And so I love classics and reading the classics in Italian. So I practiced my Italian, and I visited my friend in France, and I I built this whole trip, and I love to solo travel. So I did this whole thing just around seeing this guy in concert. Yeah.
How cool. So now you have to tell us who the artist is.
So it's this Italian artist named Eros Ramazzotti, who is actually on tour in 2026.
Okay.
And it's going to be a US and world tour. Am I frozen? Sorry.
No.
Okay, my image is frozen, but he's doing a 2026 world tour, US tour. I've actually seen him 3 times now. I love him.
I was gonna, yeah, he must be amazing.
Yeah, I think my mom and my sister, we all love him. And basically, my mom says that she heard him in a taxi when we were in Mexico as a family when my sister and I were like babies, and so we were raised on him, and so I listen to him all the time.
Oh, wow. That's,
Highly recommend.
yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So you've built your work around now, like you truly, you are a young adult coach.
Hmm.
You built your work around helping young adults find direction. What was the moment? I think part of your process is you understand that young adults are chasing a script of what they think it should be. When did you realize that they were chasing a script instead of like a life?
Wow. So I think that it came to me first. I realized that
Oh, like you
it was
were.
happening. Yeah, so
Oh,
I realized that I was happening to me first, and I was living that. And so as I was grappling that as a young adult, I was realizing that the friends around me were feeling that, and like people
yeah,
in like the internet. I didn't grow up with social media, but the more I've like lived, so many young adults are feeling this as working at higher education for a
yeah,
long time, and then working in study abroad as I live abroad now. Like, it is constant, and it is something that we deal with at all times of life. But I think for young people specifically, there are a few things. So we spend our life on a similar track as our peers, so we're all doing like very similar things at the same time, and we're all doing it at like a similar pace. And then when it comes to university, like that fractures. And then after university, or that kind of period of our life, that fractures even more. And I think that we it's a time of like exploration and opportunity and excitement, but it's also a time of great anxiety and obstacles, and trying to figure out like, what do I really want? Because as a young person, you go to school, you get good grades, like you don't really have as much say in the matter. You might be able to take an elective, right?
right,
But you don't really think about it in the same way.
yeah.
And then hopefully at university, which I think is maybe higher education is struggling with this a little bit, but ideally you're confronted with different perspectives, and you try to figure out who you are and compared to what this person is saying, and this person from a different country, or like part of part of the country that you live in, like like what they think. And so you're trying to figure out, like, do I agree with this? Do I believe this? What do I value? Right? We talked about that in the beginning. And so I think also this world is very confusing, and it is more confusing, I believe, now than it's
Oh,
ever been.
yeah.
And so,
So you've said so many profound things, like for you, I hate to assume, but I don't, without asking your age, what did you graduate college?
2014. I'm 33.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I thought you were much younger. But to know that without having like the wisdom of the years is pretty profound. I want to go
Thanks.
back to something you kind of tiptoed around about higher education. You're like, oh, higher education, oh, they're kind of having a tough time.
Yeah.
Are you kind of speaking from the point that like it's forced on kids now? We don't really know that there's the value that there used to be. Is that what you were getting at?
That's a great question, and I think it is something to be reckoned with individually. So, I growing up, there was a question of whether I wanted to take a gap year, perhaps, but I also didn't really, and I towed into that a little bit, but it wasn't really something that I grew up with. My older sister went straight from high school to college. Like, that was something that we did in my family.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say that I didn't have a choice, but it wasn't really a conversation. And I also didn't push it as a conversation. I was like, I'm going to college. And I also was in an environment where, like, where you went to college was some kind of cachet, which is
Right.
also a conversation which is not true, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely, I'm not, and also, as you've said, I've worked in higher ed, I've coached people in college and university, I work and study abroad. I think that higher education, it offers a lot. And I think what it offers, it's coming from someone who values academics, is the least of what college brings should be academics, in my opinion. And so what I believe college does is gives you a space to think critically, learn to problem solve, socialize with people outside of your like environment, like engage with new perspectives, learn how to do hard things, move away from home, learn how to do your laundry for the first time, cook for the first time, like study abroad perhaps. All of that kind of stuff I think is really where college thrives. Figure out what your major is, change your major, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But do I think higher education is for everybody? Absolutely not. Do I actually think that a gap year should be mandatory? Yes. Like I think that it's very important. Like in what universe are we like, 18 years old, you should know exactly what you want to do with your life, which is a whole huge conversation. Asking young adults what they want to do with their life is an insane question, right? Because like, how many different things do you do in your whole life? Like, what? But it's just forced on you. And then we do live in a society, at least in the West, or it's in America perhaps, but I do see it elsewhere, is like, where you go to college is important. It gives you some sort of cultural cachet. It gives you maybe networking, which is potentially
pedigree.
True. It gives you some pedigree, maybe gives you some self-confidence. Like, but it's also insanely and prohibitively expensive. Like, do you get the return on investment that you need? Do you need a degree to do what you want to do? I have people in my family who didn't get college degrees and are doing incredible things. Like, so I think it's a question that you need to think about yourself. I think it's also perhaps a conversation that you need to have with your parents or your guardians, because if you don't study this, I hear a lot, if you don't study this, I won't pay for it. Or questions like, my parents, like, it's not okay to not go to college, and what does that reckoning mean, and what kind of conversation do you need to have with your parents? And I coach people through that. So there's a lot of intertwined expectations and societal, and what's your own personal expectation of your life, all of this stuff. So I don't think higher ed is like a given, but I think it's helpful in certain situations, and I think it adds things in certain situations.
For sure. I mean, we're hitting on all of the things I'm dealing with my kids, and not dealing with things I'm lucky enough to be part of. How about that?
Sure.
But yeah, and it shows you have the capacity. When you graduate college, it shows you have the capacity to learn, the capacity to stick with something. You can do things on your own. You can do difficult things. You can manage your time. There are all sorts of things. But to come out of college and say, wow, that girl's super smart because she has a college degree, I don't think it any longer holds true.
Sure. Exactly.
Here's a good example of, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but I think what you're speaking to is like my youngest son he loves reptiles and amphibians, and he wants to be a herpetologist. And so I'm like, dude, I know you hate math, but you have to have math. And he's like, why do I need math to play with snakes and alligators? Like, because you have to go to college to be a herpetologist. That's why. Yeah. Which sucks, but he's finally starting to get it. He's like, okay, I have to pass all this minimum stuff and get that behind me to do what I really want.
Sure. And that might mean maybe along the way there's another route to or another job that isn't being a herpetologist, but maybe it's like helping design video games surrounding like snakes and animals of that nature. Like maybe it's writing children's books, like who knows? But I just like there are other avenues in which to engage with what you're interested in. But to do specific jobs, absolutely. Yeah. You need to have certain skills or pass certain degrees standards. I think that's also, I'm a huge proponent of liberal arts education, and I think as someone who changed their major in their junior year, I think it's important to like make sure to take classes in different areas and things that you potentially might be interested in, or even things that you like. That's why we have these core requirements at university. Like, oh, you're a bio major, but you still need to take an art class. Like you still need to take a humanities class just so that you can have a more well-rounded understanding and learn to think in a new way, but also like maybe you love that art class, right? So right. I think who knows? Who knows where his life is going to go? And maybe he'll like ultimately kick ass in math. Like, great.
Yeah, no telling.
Yeah, who knows?
And I think also, do you see where like a lot of parents want their kids to go to college so the parent can say, "Oh yeah, my smart kid, he's at Northwestern or he's wherever, MIT."
Yes. So I think, and you're touching on something that's really important here, which is so much of the outside noise that we hear is projection. So it's a projection based on, it can be love, it can be hopes and dreams, it can be fear. Like, I have a client whose parents like want them to go to medical school so badly, and they've graduated college, they studied bio, they realized that they actually couldn't go through with like filling out the medical school applications, and they didn't know what was stopping them, and they realized that they actually had no interest in it, and they actually didn't want to be a doctor at all.
Faint at the sight of blood.
Yeah, and they were just like, oh my God. And the conversation that they kept having with their parents and that kept coming up was that their parents wanted security for them. Like, no matter what, you have an MD.
Yep.
And I think that there are questions to be had about what security means, because I don't necessarily know if we live in a secure world like that anymore, even when it comes to healthcare.
Right. Yep.
Right? As we all know.
Yep.
But I also think that as a human population, as a society, I think it would benefit us if we just got rid of this idea that there's the security in anything.
Right.
And so I think that, that was parents projecting, oh, I'm really afraid that like my child might not be able to like afford their life, maybe financially or whatever it might be. Like, I need them to have this security. It might also be some kind of cultural cachet, right? I want to be able to say my child went to Harvard.
Yeah.
Right? Or it might be like, oh, my child will not be able to like make it as a musician, so I'm going to make sure that they study business and hate it. There are different motivations, but I definitely think that it's important for young adults to make sure to have these like real conversations with their guardians, but also for parents to be well aware that they also are imposing this structure or these shoulds on their young adults, whether consciously or subconsciously. Or like young adults pick up on everything, kids pick up on everything. Like, you might be saying right now to your like son or daughter or whomever, like that they're okay to do whatever they want, but when they were younger, you were like, oh, that person's you said flippantly to somebody else, that person's a musician, and I can't believe they're like doing that, and that kid's gonna remember that. Right? So I think it's really important, and that's also the work that I do as a coach, is that so much of what we do as children, or so much of what we learn as children, protects us, but it's ultimately what blocks us in adulthood.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it's really important to like uncover where this version of success, what this definition of failure, what does courage mean, what like uncover all of that from your childhood, to recognize like where these stories come from, so that you cannot be owned by them. And then you can have a conversation with your parents from a place of adulthood rather than like a young conversation.
Sometimes you don't know where these stories come from. Oh, here's a great example. So I grew up like probably a little darker than blue collar, like purple collar. I mean, not poor, not destitute, but God, not wealthy. And I remember my parents making comments about some of the wealthy kids in our community about their parents. Oh, well, so-and-so just got a new boat. I wonder what they did to get that. So then your association with money as a child is like, oh, shit, I don't want that, because then people say bad things about you. So then when you get it, you get rid of it. And those conversations, those things that happen as a child, it takes you a long time as an adult to figure out, okay, where does this come from and what do I do about it?
Absolutely. And I think that's where I think I fit in as a coach, is because I am not a therapist, but I definitely go deeper than other coaches. I definitely dig into a little bit of like uncovering your childhood wounds, not in a therapist way, but in a way that is trying to uncover like where do these stories come from? Because until you do understand them, until you recognize that, until you own them and understand what impact they're having on your daily adult life, you will be at the mercy of them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to gain awareness and to start questioning, like, is that true? Where did I learn that? Like, and I also think what's important is so much of what you actually really love to do, really enjoy, maybe we call it your purpose, maybe we call it like your spark or your zest for life, comes from a childhood place as well. But we spend our lives trying to be more palatable to others. Like we spend our lives trying to make everyone think that we're okay, to avoid embarrassment, rejection, and shame, and to have love, safety, and security. And as kids, we need that. So we move towards that. And then as young adults, we recognize that that gets us what we like, the feel good emotions.
Right.
And then so many of my clients are like, I don't know what I want to do. And we dig into what they want to do as children. And then that gets into like, but my family always hated wealthy people. And then it gets into all of that, right? So I think it's really important because you can't have one without the other. You can't get into what you really enjoy, like internally and as like childhood, like wonder, without digging into like, oh my God, but I always heard that that was crazy. Right? Like you need both.
Yep. And so I'll add this piece back to what we were talking about earlier,
Sure.
that might be helpful. And I've talked to so many parents, like friends, parents. There is this drive, calling. I don't know what it is, but there's something as a parent where you have this overwhelming desire to see your children do better than you did. So that's a piece of that too. And then we have our belief as parents of what better actually is.
Right.
Very few parents, it sounds like your parents were pretty cool, but very few parents say, okay, for my child to do better than me, that means he needs to be happier. He needs to be freer. He needs to have more peace. Yeah. No, it's all about success.
I think, I mean, I appreciate that it sounds like, I mean, my parents are cool and I have great relationships with them now, but it was a challenge. And I think when I changed my major my junior year, I was asked to change it back. And I grew up in a home that if like math and science reigned supreme.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that. And so I started out that, hated it, and decided to shift. So like, I mean, I reckoned with it myself, and then I reckoned with my self-worth. I mean, I lived, because I started out that way, I like all my best friends from university and everyone I lived with are doctors now. And like, that's a whole, like, you know, trying to figure out everyone at university being like, oh my God, my classes are so hard. And I'm a humanities student and people are not really valuing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's challenging. It's not easy.
Right.
But I also think exactly what you're talking about. Parents and young adults have to reckon with, like, what is ideally, I would love for my child to have peace and
As you know, I've been coaching for a little over a year now, and my coach just laid something pretty heavy on me. They've challenged me to have 50 powerful coaching conversations booked within the next 30 days. So if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, maybe successful but unfulfilled, or you just need to talk something through with someone that you know will listen, then I would love to have that conversation with you. This is not a tactic. There's no sales pitch. It's just one powerful conversation. This is complimentary to you. So if you want in, send me a message and I'll send you the link. I got you.
Happiness, that's for sure. But like, what does that look like? What does success mean in my eyes? What does success mean in like my child's eyes? What does it mean what do I think happiness for me is versus what happiness for them is, or peace? And then it's also exactly what you talked about at the beginning. Like, what do I value that maybe my child doesn't value, right? And like, that is a huge form of what gives us, or a huge impact on what gives us peace or happiness or joy, or like, I think people are finding that in whether or not they want to have kids, or whether or not they want to have a partner, or whether like they want to own a home. Like, everyone's trying to figure out like, oh, I thought this whole idea of adulting, I thought this whole idea of like success or happiness meant all of this.
Right.
And then people are struggling because they're not hitting that. But I think what we're realizing, or what we need to realize, is like everything means something different for everybody. But also, being an adult doesn't mean like owning a home and having kids. Being an adult means like being able to soothe yourself and figure out who you are and what you want and go after that. So I think it's really important to go inward first.
Right.
And then go outward.
Yeah.
If need.
All right. So the name, like your coaching
Yeah.
business, Bat Out of Hell, that's bold, right? What is
Yeah.
it? I mean, what does it symbolize in the transformation that your clients go through? I'm guessing that's what it's from. I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few things. So, and I love this question because when you're starting a business, your name is pivotal, right? It's like, what am I going to name this thing? That's
Yeah.
my baby.
Yep.
It's very important. And I realized that like I really have a kinship with bats, and I have always loved what they symbolize, which is transformation and rebirth and coming out of the old and into the new, and coming out of the darkness and into the light. And I think, or like coming out of hell and into this like getting out of here and getting what you want. I think that's really important. I also know that bats are highly social and interesting creatures that spend a lot of their time upside down. And so I think that's really cool. They're seeing the world from a whole different perspective most of the time, which is something that a lot of us don't do. And I realized that I wanted a name that was a little bit left of center, a little bit rock and roll. I'm not a one-size-fits-all person. I'm not a one-size-fits-all coach. It's not about slotting people into this thing that I do and like they have to figure it out. It's really what works for somebody might not work for somebody else.
Right.
So I wanted something that really reckoned with or showed people that it's really an individual kind of kick-ass thing that you're doing. And it can, while it's serious and while it's a lot of work and while it's hard and, tricky and sticky and swampy sometimes,
Yeah.
it's also really cool and it's also fun and it's exciting. And the idea when you start to realize that like you're the captain of your ship and you're capable of a lot more than you give yourself credit for. And like once you realize that like you can trust yourself, you can have these conversations, you can make these decisions and be like, I have me, like I can figure it out because I trust myself. And that is what we're trying to build. Resilience, self-reliance, self-trust,
Yeah.
the ability to stand alone, to tolerate discomfort. That's what we're trying to like build in this young adult generation population. And once you have those skills and tools, you can kind of master anything.
Yeah. And then, and I relate to that because like what I'm working on with my youngest son, he's my favorite.
Oh, oh.
I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but when I started this podcast, I agreed with him that I would say that he was my favorite every chance I got.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the other two love it.
Okay, good. Okay.
But he asks for permission a lot. Like, I mean, I'm going to exaggerate, but this is what I mean. Like we got socks, right? So he has like this 3-pack of socks and you rip the cardboard open and the socks are gone and the cardboard's laying on the counter. And he's like, should I throw this away?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Well, you could eat it. Like, what are your options?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because parents, it's so much easier for the parent just to do it, solve it, or answer it, as opposed to letting them have the pain of going through and doing it themselves. And not that my example is great,
Sure.
but there's a
No,
lot.
it's
There's a
fine.
lot of that, you know.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. I think I definitely see it in clients and students alike, where parents and I there are a lot of things going on in the universe, in the world today, but I think the COVID pandemic, social media and technology, but also this idea of helicopter parenting or lawnmower parenting or whatever we want to call it, which is parents doing a lot of things and clearing the way, clearing obstacles for their children, which is actually inhibiting young adults from gaining and developing these skills and tools such as resilience and self-reliance and self-trust. So to the extent where, yes, your example is hyperbole, but it's also could be accurate, in which even the smallest thing might be like, oh my God, like I don't know how to make a decision right now.
Yeah.
And I need to ask for permission. I think that's problematic. And I think that young adults and parents need to have a conversation about that, because I've seen it in clients where they don't know how to make a choice. And in fact, not only do they not know how to make a choice, they don't know how to go through the motions of like figuring out what the answer could be, and then also being able to, like, they don't trust themselves to land. But I also think what's important to recognize is there might be something else in there, and I don't mean to necessarily talk about your son, but it's mostly just another way to think about this is like there's an approval aspect of this, right? So it's not necessarily just asking for permission about, I don't know how to figure out what to do next, but also like, I want to be good enough. I'm looking for approval somewhere that I like, if I do this right, then I'll be a good person, then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And if I make a mistake, then I'm a bad person, and there's shame and embarrassment in that. Like, what if I throw it out and I'm actually supposed to recycle it or whatever? And I think that there's fear in that. And that's a kind of conversation or friction that needs to happen, and an internal work that needs to figure out, like, what happens if someone gets mad at you? Are you okay with that?
Right.
Like, or do you fall apart with that? Or do you avoid confrontation? Or do you need to and how does that impact your life? Right?
Yeah, there's a lot. So that leads into a little bit for me, like it kind of drives me to, yeah, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of comparison, really, is what it boils down to. When I was a kid, I mean, even growing up, 15, 16, 17, it's like, could I run faster than this other kid? That was really, and there's the same kid in my neighborhood. We didn't have this huge reach of people to compare ourselves to. Whereas now, young adults, they're drowning in input with social media, primarily, obviously. Mr. Beast, Jake Paul, and now me, I get on Instagram and I see people my age in my business, and they're on a private plane. I'm like, holy shit, why don't I have that? Right. But with young adults, how do you teach them to filter the noise, all that noise?
I think it's tricky, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so I think where I start is, how does it feel to engage with these accounts, for example? So I think that there is a growing number of young adults and people actually in general who are realizing that it doesn't feel good. And so there are a lot of people who I'm meeting with and talking to that realize that, like, this isn't good for me. I need to change it, but maybe I don't know how, or I just am gonna go cold turkey and delete it, or whatever that scale is, or I just feel like I can't. But there is this innate acknowledgement and understanding that I don't feel good about this. I also want to recognize that there are some really cool things about social media, such as connection, conversation. I think it's important that there are people who are talking about how there's an account that I like that is this girl documenting how hard it is to find a job, and she's bringing everybody along for the ride and giving tips and tricks about the job search, and there's a lot of community around that, and people showing unphotoshopped images, and so there's a lot of body positivity and body acceptance on it, and so I think that's really, but I also think that it's very important, and this is something that I try to talk to my clients about and do talk to my clients about, is be intentional about this, right? Be aware that these social media feeds and platforms are not neutral. They're optimized for engagement. And your algorithm is slowly but surely closing you into a box of exactly an echo chamber of what you're afraid of, what you are nervous about, everything that you feel. It's actually just all of your fears. Because that's what you end up watching. And it can also be a lot of like feel good content if you like it. Like most of my Instagram For You page is like baby animals, right? Because like I need that boost of serotonin. But I also have this part of like, oh my God, all these people are doing all these really cool things. And I also think it's really important to recognize that you're seeing someone's curated reality, right? You're comparing your insides to someone's outsides.
Right.
And their outsides that they took 15 pictures, or 15 is minimum, like,
and then cropped out all the sadness.
Right. Like, who knows if that person, like in your example, who knows if that person's on a plane, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay. So, or maybe that person has like generational wealth.
Right.
Or maybe that person has 5 streams of income, or maybe like, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe someone unfortunately died in their family and left them a lot of money. Like or maybe that person is lying.
Right.
So there's like all of this that it's very hard to keep in your head, but I think it's very important to be aware of. And then also when you sign on, ask yourself like why you're using it. So are you looking for connection, validation? Are you looking for inspiration? Are you following these artists' account and you're like, oh my God, this is so cool, I want to go see their stuff? Or are you like, oh my God, this is terrible, I'm a terrible artist and I can't do this? Like, what are you looking for? If you're looking for connection, that's great. Community is there, but recognize that it's not a substitute for in-person connection. We are living through a loneliness epidemic, and that goes for male and female, like, and trans people. It goes for everyone. People are struggling connecting, and I think social media is a huge impact on that. And so I think it's very important to be aware, because when you doom scroll, you're just like feeding yourself, and you're not even aware of why you're using it.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have intentionality, set timers, delete it from your phone every so often. Recognize if you can't delete it, that is problematic, and we want to understand like what hold it has on you and why you need to use it and what that gives you. Take breaks. Remind yourself that your worth is not based on the number of likes or followers that you have. I mean, I honestly, like, the fact that they're called followers, I have a real problem with. It's turning us all into sheep. Like, I just feel like we need to figure out, like, just it's awareness, really. And then we try to break through and figure out what it serves you and how to get that elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned connection, and I make this argument constantly, like at my age, with other parents same age as me, have kids the same age. People are constantly questioning, like, well, did your kid drive? You know, when I turned 16, like, I was there that day getting my license at DMV. All 3 of my kids, it was a challenge, especially my favorite kid, the youngest. It was a challenge to get them to want to drive. And I tell other adults, I'm like, look, our connection was at the McDonald's parking lot. I had to get there to connect and socialize. My kids, their connection is on their phone. That's where they connect. They don't have to go anyplace.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you are pointing at that's really important is sometimes they're called third spaces, but I also think it could be anything, really, in that it could be a sports team, it could be an art class, it could be a whatever. Just having something to go to and connect on outside of the world that is on your phone is hugely important. So whatever something, like, yes, it is about a meeting place. That is true. And I used to have that as well. But I also think to make sure to have an activity that is outside of your phone is hugely important. And that also comes down to your parents. So it starts at a young age, because kids now are born with this, like, technology at their fingertips. So, like, do you let your kids have screens at a young age? Do you make sure that you have activities that you do as a family, or put them in sports teams, or put them in art classes or music classes or whatever at a young age to make sure that they have things outside of their phone? Like, it kind of needs to start early now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a difficult dance. When my kids were really small, I remember having a conversation with another parent, and he was bragging on the fact, he was like, well, you know, my daughter doesn't even know how to turn that thing on. Doesn't even know how to turn on an iPad. I'm like, well, my kids are 8 and they're using iPads in school. So that just means that your daughter is going to be behind. Like, where's the balance? It's so difficult.
Yeah. I'm also that doesn't make any sense. Like that doesn't sound right. I feel like maybe that person is true. Maybe that's and that could be great, but I also think maybe that's a little bit far in the other direction as you're saying. But there is totally a balance. And of course, I mean, I in higher ed, we're definitely having conversations about technology in classrooms. I think higher ed in the world that I'm in is having a lot of conversations about going back to analog and having like no computers and no technology in classrooms. And I think that that's maybe not the answer either, right? It's a little bit too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like what we need to start to like training teachers about how to use AI in their classrooms, like in a like professional way. And maybe we need to figure out how to teach kids how to like ask AI better prompts and question AI more so. Like maybe that's where we need to go. And it's a really interesting discussion, but technology, I also think it's important to recognize that my fear with this is that it's going to shrink our creative problem solving and shrink our decision making.
Yeah. I see that in my use already.
Yeah, and our attention span is one thing, but I think not knowing how to figure out how to do something without asking ChatGPT or whomever these things are named, right? But I also fear that our fire gets ignited faster now. So like if somebody we talk to doesn't have the answer, or if somebody we talk to doesn't know or like can't give us the answer that we want, we might react or get angry faster. Like, why aren't you just I'm just going to ask ChatGPT. Like, why aren't you
Right. Yeah.
And I think that is scary to me. But that, my ideas on AI are that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
But yeah, it is something really important to talk about because I also recognize that, as we know, and as we've seen in the news, like ChatGPT can be dangerous. And I think it's really important to dive into that as a conversation as with your young adult, or have them talk to somebody about. And I think it's not only your connection to AI, but also recognize that maybe like AI ChatGPT isn't a substitute for talking to a therapist, talking to a coach, talking to a parent. It isn't the same thing. And I think it's not like, oh, I have someone to talk to and it's this like third party computer, big system data thing. Yeah. I don't think that's safe. But that's another conversation.
Okay, so let's go back to success. If success had like an algorithm or a formula, then everyone's would look alike, right?
Sure.
How do you help young adults define success in a way that doesn't look like everybody else's? Like, I'm sure there's questions, like, are there how do you do that?
Yeah. So I think what's important to recognize is like, my work is interesting because people are interesting and people are different. So there is no universe in which anybody's anything looks exactly the same, right? So success can't actually, if you're being honest with yourself and truly looking inward, cannot look the same as anybody else's. And I think that is where we get tied up into like where it is social media, or where like social expectations or parental expectations or your own expectations of yourself, whatever that might be, that can get sticky. And I also think it's important to recognize that like what I might like, exactly what I said, what I might say for someone might not resonate with someone else. So this is what I'm going to say now is a bit of a generalization, but it's really about trying to is digging inward and looking inward and asking yourself these questions of, is it true? Is that something I was taught? Are my parents going to be mad at me if I do this? Is this something that gives me, am I excited by this and anxious about it? Or am I just don't really want to do it? Is this something that like really turns me on. I do definitely have questions. And they go there. Some of them are a little bit like, some of them are, when did I feel the happiest, right? And then some of them are like a little bit more nuanced, where you don't necessarily get to like what the question is exactly. It's a little bit like, it gets that you're under the radar.
Yeah.
So you can like, you don't have a chance to think about it in that same way. And I do have a 3-month program that walks people through, like, the first month is what, like, who you are really. And there's a bunch of questions about like really being honest with yourself.
Scary
about who you
question right
are.
there.
Yeah. And then who, like, what do you value? That's another like set of questions. And then what do you want your life to look like? That's another set of questions. And then the next month is like, what is blocking you from living and creating and going after that life that you say you want? And then living your fiercest, most authentic, true life. And then the third month is, the beginning of it is really just like going back and answering those questions again a little bit, because generally once you go through your blocks, the answers to what you said first do shift. And then creating like a real like structure of how you want to move forward, because like not creating a plan is like, then you're just like, what do I do with all this information?
Right.
I think what's really important is to have also check-ins after that. I do have patients and clients who like meet with me outside of that structure, but I think what's really important is like, you need to define it for yourself, and you need to learn to look inward and trust your inner voice. And I think that some people have never learned to trust their inner voice. Some people can't hear their inner voice. Some people disregard it for certain reasons, because stories they've told themselves or whatever it might be. So I think we get into all of that. It's all interwoven.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now I'm shifting gears again, but I want to ask you about this. When I was coming of age, I guess, like I graduated high school in '92, and I remember that was the year that Bill Clinton ran against the first Bush, and we were generation. I was a Gen Xer, and we were labeled as lazy. You know, we wouldn't even vote, and that was when like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and the whole grunge movement was coming about. But really, what it was is that we were just small. We're just a small. I don't even, what's the word? Demographic? Is that?
Sure.
Yeah. So now I think we've maybe mislabeled, well, I'm giving a bit of the question away. What do you see as the most underrated strength for Gen Z and millennials that we keep mislabeling? Or is there a strength?
I think that one of the biggest strengths that I find millennials and Gen Z bring to the table is this idea of like, we are not okay with the this is how it's always been done mentality. And I think that is not only pretty badass, but I think it's also necessary, because so many of the systems that we have in this world, whether it's healthcare, the housing market, corporate structure, higher education, like we're dealing with global warming and geopolitical unrest and all of this stuff, like so many of like, let alone politics, right? Like
Yeah.
so many of these systems that we have are broken, and how we have been doing these things is clearly not working. And I think that young adults are capable and able to just say, this isn't serving me, and I'm gonna not partake in this anymore, and I'm going to try to figure out another way. And I think young adults opting out of the career that we have always understood it to be might be seen as lazy, and it can also be seen as like disloyal, and it could also be seen as young adults opting out of like life as we know it. Like it could be all like, it can be seen as embarrassing, it could be whatever. But I also think we need to think about like, actually it's not serving the human population in the way that we want it to and need it to. And I think that they are the first people that are going to say, like, I'm not going to partake in this system anymore, because career that is broken, right? There's no such thing as a career anymore. Loyalty to a company isn't secure and doesn't get the returns you need. So why would somebody continue to participate in that? So I think, and that happens in all areas where young adults are labeled as, or belittled. They're labeled as not benefiting society. They're like just frivolous and doing their own thing. They're like not, they're disloyal. And it's just not true. I think what they're doing is trying to find a new way in a world that is constantly shifting under their feet. And it's really important to recognize that.
Yeah.
And to recognize the power in that.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a good thing. For the young adult that's listening right now, assuming we have young adults listening to some old guy's podcast,
Yeah.
the young adult listening right now thinking, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know anything about anything. I feel lost. I don't know, like I operate in this 30 seconds at a time. Just be present, be where you are, just take a step, the ground will find you.
Yeah.
What would you say to the young adult? What's the smallest first step that you would offer them to take that would actually matter, so that would be helpful? Just something small.
I would first, perhaps I would say, take a deep breath, right? And I would probably say, whether it's go for a walk, have a little dance party in your apartment, journal, just try to take some time. Well, actually, interesting. Those do different things, right? Like dancing gets your yayas out and helps you kind of reset, and gets your endorphins going. Whereas the other two might do that as well, but it also brings you some clarity. Actually, after dancing, you might have some clarity too. But I think something that just helps you silence your brain, look inward, not look for other people's permission or approval or whatever, and just try to be with yourself, and actually, as much as possible, do that without distraction. So try not to have the TV on in the background. Music is fine, but it's just sit in it. And I don't mean that physically. You could be on a walk, you could dance it, you could be whatever, you could go for a run, but sit in the feelings.
Yeah.
Because I think so much of what we do is distract ourselves, and that's part of social media too.
Yeah.
And it's until you learn to sit in the discomfort, because so much of young adults really do struggle with the unknown and being okay with being uncomfortable. And that is an issue, because that's where so much growth happens. That's where you figure out what you really want in the uncomfort and discomfort in the uncomfortable. And so I think it's really important to learn to sit in that.
Yeah, fair enough. That starting there probably is a good place.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have a 3-month program that you do. What else? What other coaching do you offer? Do you do a la carte, one-off stuff? Do you do anything longer term?
Yeah. So I definitely believe in a personal approach. So if we talk and we figure out okay, I have this decision that I really need to make, and it is short term, and I really need to figure this out, then we go with that, and we might have a longer session, couple hour session, or 2 days or whatever it might be to get that decision made. If you have a one-off question that you just really want to ask me, we could have one session. I definitely have people that I've worked with for years. I think it's really not about slotting people into my practice. It's really about making what fit for you, what's best for you, and what makes sense for your time and your schedule, and what you need. So yeah, absolutely. I have clients who work with me in different ways.
Okay. And what's the easiest way for someone to find you? What's the best way?
Sure. So my website is batoutofhell.net.
I love it.
So yeah, so you can contact me through that website.
BATOUTTA hell.net.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
You can also DM me on TikTok and Instagram. That's also fine and worthy. And so I think that those would be the three ways, the
Okay.
best ways.
Cool.
You can also see me on the street, but
And just
if
say
you do
hi.
that,
Hey.
just say hi. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. What have I missed? Any parting advice? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think something that I just want to say, because obviously there's no way to get through everything and like talk about
Right.
everything that's important. But I think what's important is that I find so much of what I like hear from young adults is this idea of being behind.
Yeah.
And I want to just reiterate or say again, because I say it all the time, is this idea that there's like no such thing as being behind, because you're exactly where you need to be and where you should be and where you are where you are, right? And I also think that we need to be aware of like, what does behind mean? Like, what are you chasing? What's your end goal? And what do you like? We die at the end of this.
Nobody's
So whether
making it
or
out
not-
alive.
Right. And I think what's so interesting is like so much of what I hear is I'm opting out. Like, I don't want to even, like, who cares? None of this matters.
Yeah.
But I think what's important to note is like, you're here, right? And hopefully you're here for a long time. So why not make it like your fullest, most authentic, biggest life that you want? Like, why not try things? And I don't mean biggest as in like you have to travel the world and you have to do all these things. I mean like what is right for you and like go at it fully.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to like really start questioning, what does behind mean? What are my fears? What's blocking me from doing the things that I want to do? What am I afraid of? What are the stories that I've always told myself? All of these things, start questioning, start talking to yourself, start like, you'll see me walking around. I'm like talking to myself out loud all the time because I think it's really important. Be your own best friend. I think that's huge, huge. Cliche, but actually huge and will put you in such good stead.
Yeah.
And I think if you are not really sure where to begin, or if you think you need someone to talk to, you can set up a consultation call with me and we can start from there and you can learn more about me and the work that I do and we can see if it's a good fit. But I think talking to someone really does help get things figured out. But it's also important to figure it out yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah. And just saying things out loud is
Yeah.
sometimes they don't seem so big.
Yeah.
Well, Hillary, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for joining
Thank
me
you.
for sure. And thanks for sharing your experience, like with honesty. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
Absolutely.
And to everybody else listening, if this episode hit home, share it with somebody who needs it. And then if you know a young adult that is in this situation, or it's not a negative thing, but somebody that just maybe would like some help with direction or figuring it out, or just someone to talk to, then send them to Hillary, batoutofhell.net. You don't have to have it all figured
not
out.
negative at all.
Yeah.
No.
You don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. Just need to move. Just 30 seconds at a time. And then you do it again. That's the whole game. This is All Can, No Can. I'm your host, Jeff Luther. And here we're talking about build the future. Trust the process. Just do the damn thing. And I cannot wait to see you next time.
Thanks for listening to All Can, No Can't. If today's episode resonated with you, remember it's not about the chaos you face. It's about how you choose to take back control. It's about finding that one small can in the can't you're given and grinding it down. Find your angle, carve your place out in the world, and get the fucking win. Do that by finding what you can do and not listening to what you can't. You choose. Be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support helps me reach more people that are ready to embrace the all-can mindset. And it lets them know there's someone that's willing to walk with them no matter how dark the path gets. You can find me on Insta at JDLuther 2.0 and allcan_no-can't. This is where I share more tips, stories, inspiration to help fuel your journey. And until next time, keep pushing boundaries, breaking limits, proving to yourself that anything is possible, even when you're told it isn't. Remember, life's not about can't. It's all can. Go prove them wrong.